Hey YouTube, I'm Kenneth Ryan.
I'm Lindsay Resop.
And we're back with another exciting episode of Fanfiction Friday. Today we're going back into the lesbian mode.
Without the dicks this time.
Without the dicks this time.
But the same author.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, the last one we read, Tamaranian Meeting Season, was written by the same author. The fic we're reading today, to take a break from Clockwork, is The Sailor Scout Subway by Drace Domino. This is a Sailor Moon fanfiction. You guys are welcome if you love Sailor Moon like I do.
It's going to be interesting. I've never actually I watched it when I was really young. I don't remember most of it.
Sailor Moon.
I didn't watch most of it. I had a couple books that were...
The summary for this fic is, the Sailor Scouts have been up to something and leave Sailor Mars out of it. When Ray decides to track down her friends one Thursday night, she finds out their messy little way of relaxing before the weekend. This is apparently the winner of the author's January Patreon poll. So
I said I was going to be Ray and Amy? Ami? How do you pronounce her name?
And I will be Usagi, Makoto, and Minako. Do you want to start?
Sure. Because I guess it's my character's point of view.
Sure.
Are we going to do any weird voices? Probably.
We have to distinguish them.
The other Sailor Scouts were up to something. Ray just knew it. For 4 weeks in a row now, there had been suspicious behavior every Thursday, all leading up to an odd Friday morning in which her friends seemed exhausted, spent, and fatigued. I wonder what they were doing. The first time it happened, the serious-minded Sailor Mars assumed it was just a fluke. After all, activity from the Dark Kingdom had been particularly high lately, and every last one of them had been working harder than ever in an attempt to protect the innocent and fight back the evil forces that threatened their world. It threw her off, however, that while all 4 of her friends seemed completely exhausted Friday morning, none of them seemed particularly unhappy. They were smiling and joking and seemed even relaxed, despite the fact that none of them seemed to be able to keep their eyes open. Wow, they've been really working hard. Amy, I don't know. How do you pronounce it?
Ami-chan?
Ami?
It'd be Ami if you're being Japanese.
Ami had even fallen asleep in the middle of class, which is a red flag of the highest degree. Eventually, those odd Thursday nights and Friday mornings became simply too much for Ray to ignore, and finally, the most focused of the scouts took it upon herself to get to the bottom of the mystery. After all, if the Dark Kingdom was truly behind some sort of long-term plot, her friends could be in danger. They're in so much danger. It was her duty as their friend and their teammate to get to the bottom of things, again, to find out just what was happening to them on Thursday nights, and do her best to protect them. And perhaps more so than any other of the scouts, Sailor Mars took her duty very, very seriously. She just wished her undercover outfit didn't feel so silly. The young woman was crouched in the bushes of Usagi's home, her body wrapped in a long trench coat that covered her from shoulders to her shins in a bland dark brown. She'd even found a matching hat, which I'm going to wear to that ASIN meetup. Yes. Totally, no I'm not. To go along with it, unless someone asks, just saying.
Right.
A wide-brimmed thing that truly made her look like someone out of an American detective movie. A pair of dark sunglasses completed the image, and with her long black hair tucked up into her hat, her disguise was, well, still not very good. Jacket or no, she was still an attractive young woman underneath the fabric, and her slender figure wasn't hidden by the jacket so much as hugged by it. The belt that held it closed around her waist only managed to accent her lovely figure, and try as she might, Ray wasn't able to get all of her dark locks tucked up into the hat. Her intention was to become a shadow lurking in the bushes, spying on her friends for their own safety. That seems like a stalker. She ended up looking more like a pervert skulking around in the shadows outside of a teenage girl's house. It was a risk she'd have to take, however, because no matter how she looked, her friends could very well be in danger. She was determined to get to the bottom of it, again, that very night, and as she crouched there among the leaves, studying the house in the distance, she promised herself that her friends wouldn't have another sleepy morning ahead of them. Sure they're not. Oh, hey, there's gonna be dialogue.
Wow.
By the time morning came again, she'd know just what was affecting her friends. One by one, her friends showed up at Usagi's house, each one of them appearing contrary to what they had told Ray during the day. Ami was supposed to be working on her homework, and Makoto had claimed to have a cooking class, and Minako had been talking up an audition. Each one of them showed up at Usagi's home, despite the promises they had told Rei during the day, stacking lie upon lie to the deep mystery that Sailor Mars was uncovering. The dark-haired girl had to hold her indignation close to her chest to prevent her from rushing ahead, knowing full well that if she pushed forward demanding answers, she'd only ruin this one opportunity to solve the problem herself. Instead, the young woman continued to crouch in the bushes, nibbling her bottom lip and waiting until the door to Usagi's home opened up one last time. Her friends were suddenly on the move, talking to each other as they all began to move as a group. Each one of them was still wearing their school uniforms, though they had left their bags behind. Further proof that their goal that evening wasn't academic. Oh, God. While they walked, Rei kept the pace, moving silently in the shadows as she tailed her friends, every now and again getting close enough to hear fragments of their conversation.
I'm so excited for tonight! Usagi grinned wide, her sweeping tails of blonde hair dancing after her as she practically skipped forward. I thought we'd never get here! This week went so slowly!
You're always so impatient. He tried with a smile. I'm not sure how I'm going to keep that up. I'm not going to remember that. Rei could hear the same excitement in her other friend's voice. The same half-veiled thrill Ami usually had only during a day when they had a big exam ahead of them. And once you're there, you'll never even want to leave.
Can you blame her? Minako spoke with a grin and moved a hand up to idly tap her chin. Was it last week we had to carry her back home? She overdid it like she always does. The other girls all laughed while Usagi pouted and ranted, still being vague about just where the girls were going. While Rei continued to tail them, she followed them down a set of subway stairs, moving silently and stealthily into the dim lighting of the station. As soon as the girls were halfway down the stairs, their voice carried even further, echoing a bit and making it easier for Rei to hear them, words that, in truth, were a bit hard for her to hear. Okay, Makoto's like a tough guy. She's the tomboy.
Butch.
You guys, I still feel bad not asking Rei to join us. Makoto was the voice of compassion in the movement. Her sometimes rough and tomboyish tone sounding sweeter and sadder in the moment.
In the moment for the second time.
Yeah, I was like, Makoto was never a woman that lacked for confidence.
This battery's dying too.
But in the moment, she sounded truly conflicted about leaving out the fifth member of their group. I mean, it's Rei. I don't like it either, Makoto, but... Minako's voice was thoughtful, curious, and even a bit hesitant. How could she possibly put it in a way that was kind to her supposedly absent friend? Rei wouldn't understand or approve. She's too much of a stick in the mud. Usagi had no concerns about remaining diplomatic, and from her vantage point, Rei could even see the blonde stick out her tongue in disdain over the absent scout. The words cut into Rei in the moment, but she remained steadfast, continuing to linger in the back as she kept listening to her friends. She'd lecture us all about how we're being irresponsible and whine about what we're doing before even trying it herself. Sorry, these voices are tiring. That's exactly what she'd do! Minako turned to Makoto, offering Usagi's perfect explanation. The other girls all conceded to the fact, and, as each one of them nodded, Rei felt another little sting grow inside her chest. Her worst suspicion had turned out to be false, and the reality of her friend's long Thursdays cut her far more personally than she had anticipated. Rei stood near the top of the stairs, still hidden from her friend's sight, her heart racing and aching in equal measure as she listened to the words of her beloved friends. Hey, so both of my camera batteries died, so we're recording this about an hour and a half after.
So we should probably be a little quieter this time. Not too quiet.
So this is gonna be sort of like an ASMR experience where...
I mean, most of the dialogue isn't gonna be too graphic.
Yeah, where we're just gonna be a little bit quieter, because
as far as I remember, I don't know.
It's now 1:30 in the morning, and we started recording this at about 11:40.
I don't remember what her voice sounds like.
So we're here, and we're just gonna keep going. So that's why it's different.
It's been like an hour, but I don't remember what his voice sounds like.
It's been a while. Part of her almost wished it really had been a Dark Kingdom trap, and her friends were being lured away every week for some odd ritual. At least then she wouldn't have that growing feeling of rejection building in the pit of her belly. The serious-minded young woman bit down a little harder on her bottom lip. Oh!
No, stop.
Oh.
No.
Jake, no.
Kitty, kitty. Jakey, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come here.
Bit down a little hard on her bottom lip. We have a cat on the bed right now.
Kitty, kitty.
And despite her...
You want to see my kitty, kitty?
Oh, no.
Here, Jakey.
He's so...
Lift him up.
I'm scared, though. He's so small. Oh, God.
Jakey, say hi to the camera, Jakey.
Okay, so...
He's fine.
The serious-minded young woman bit down a little harder on her bottom lip, and despite her own trembling body, she decided to continue forward. She had already come this far. She might as well see just what it was her friends assumed she wouldn't be on board with.
I forget.
Just...
This way, girls! Amy's voice carried the group. Carried the group. No, away from the computer. Sit over by this lamp. Just do it. And they moved as one towards the end of the platform in the station. Our car will be here in just a moment or two. I forget. What did she sound like? The next few minutes left Ray racing to keep up, and in the end, she was left in a state of utter shock. The car that the other scouts made their way to was at the very last platform of the station. A platform that even had signs up showcasing that the particular train stopped there was out of service. Still hiding in the shadows, Sailor Mars watched as a train showed up despite what the signs all said. A 3-car subway train which only opened the door at the very rear. The other 4 scouts all exchanged excited glances as they slipped inside one after the other. And without any more hesitation, the subway door shut closed and the car began to move once more. Oh, this is me again.
Yep.
Wait, she doesn't have a voice yet.
Yeah, you get to make it up. You got this.
Darn it!
Yes!
Sailor Mars hissed through her teeth as it started to move, and she was forced to turn to her powers in order to keep up. The trench coat and hat were tossed aside as she called upon the power of Mars, the uniform of her status as a Sailor Scout glimmering into place. Vibrant red heels, a smooth pleated red skirt, and a skin-tight white top that clung around her entire frame and gripped across her mound and rear. That's the word for vagina lump.
Really?
Yes, mound.
I thought that was referencing her boob.
No, mound means her vagina.
So she's got a camel toe?
No, it's like the cup in the outside like
this,
not like digging in there. Flame danced in the wake of her movement as Sailor Mars rushed to the moving subway car, and with her raven hair flowing behind her, she lunged forward in a mighty leap. He roared a mighty roar as he filled my butt with his love. Shrek is love, Shrek is life. Only barely managing to land at the very top of the car. She instantly kept her head low as the car began to speed, barreling through the tunnel and forcing the wind to whip at Ray's beautiful features. Yes, she is beautiful. We get this. It's only been described 17 times.
Right.
She was going to great lengths to see just what her friends were up to, activating her powers and leaping onto a speeding subway car. But by that point, she simply had to know what they were doing. What was so fun that they decided to exclude her for fear of ruining it? What was it the other 4 enjoyed so much they could all unite together every Thursday night and savor? She just had to know. And moreover, she had to prove that she wasn't such a stick in the mud that she couldn't enjoy it too. Enjoy it. Ray had already decided. Whatever the other 4 were doing, she was going to join. She was too mature and too focused to whine and cry about being left out. That was something Usagi would do in her often infinite childishness. Ray would take the criticism from her friends to heart and let herself live in the moment of happiness that the other 4 had found. It was important to be responsible, but it was more important to be part of the team. You might regret that, but I don't think so, because fanfiction. Ray's resolve to that decision was tested as she finally swung into the final subway car, now empty, and quickly moved up to the middle one. She continued to creep so as not to be seen, but kept her powers activated under the mantle of Sailor Mars, her heels lightly clicking along the ground as she moved further and further up. Finally, she drew herself to the window leading to the next car, and, as she looked inside, Ray's opinion of her friends changed instantly and forever. Ow! Oh my! The Shinto priest trembled as she saw it. Everything she had ever known about Usagi, Ami, Makoto, and Minako crumbling before her eyes. Each one of her friends had assumed their sailor identity in the time it took Rei to catch up to them, and now Sailor Moon, Sailor Mercury, Sailor Jupiter, and Sailor Venus were all in that middle subway car, and all of them were doing something Rei had never imagined them doing. The middle car was filled with men, most of them looking to be middle-aged, and the majority of them wearing professional business suits that suggested they were well off. Oh my. Though the scouts were still all fully dressed in their mystical uniforms, most of the men had at least discarded their pants and their boxers, standing there half naked as they all maneuvered around a collective pile of scouts. In the center of the car, each of them resting on their knees, the Sailor Scouts were sucking as many cocks as they could.
What?
Oh my god.
Oh no.
This author. They're very imaginative. Rei's cheeks darkened as she watched, her eyes wide and the color draining from her cheeks as it all unfolded before her. The other 4 Sailor Scouts were surrounded on all angles, and each one of them was managing at the very least 2 different men between their mouths and hands. Sailor Moon knelt facing the rear car and was in full display of Rei, each one of her gloved hands wrapped around the lengths of a middle-aged man, while a third was holding each of her blonde pigtails, forcing her mouth down upon his thick, stiff length. Handlebars! The smile on Sailor Moon's face as she sucked was utterly undeniable, and as ribbons of spit dangled from the edge of her lips, she was easily the loudest of the 4, making high-pitched cries of delight, even with her throat pressed deep with cock. The other 3 were in much the same situation, every last one of them servicing the horde of men surrounding them. Jupiter had tucked her head just underneath the sack of a man with gray in his hair, licking lewdly around the edge of his pouch, and letting the spit-covered, slimy shaft drape across her face. Oh my, that sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
She was jerking a second man off, but her other hand was busy down below, lifting her skirt with her right
W-R-I-T-E.
and her gloved fingers within the strap of her uniform, petting along her hidden slit. The words people use for vaginas in fanfiction.
Mound.
Yeah. Beside her, Sailor Venus was holding a man in each hand and pulling their cocks together at the center, trying eagerly to stuff both of their tips into her mouth with varying levels of success. Mostly, she ended up just drooling and licking around their touching tips. Ooh, they're touching, that's gay. As she rapidly jerked them both in swift motions. And though she was never able to take more than just the tips of both their cocks in her mouth, the men didn't seem to mind. I think Jake is tired.
Me too, Jake. Me too.
Of all of them, Rei gazed forward with the most surprise at Sailor Mercury. Oh, hey, that's me. Ami, so intelligent and often so timid, was little more than a spit-coated mess. Her short blue hair, I have a wig that too light, but also, was already disheveled around her features, and lines of makeup marked her face, a surefire sign that she had already throated and gagged on enough middle-aged cock to make her eyes water. Oh my. She wore a wicked smile as she held her mouth open wide and greedily letting any man that chose to walk before her rapidly fuck it. We should have done the other fic.
Oh
it was so much shorter, but it was kind of cute between 2 of them, and there was a makeup joke. She wore a wicked smile as she held her mouth open wide and greedily. Oh wait, I chose that. I read that already. Letting a man that chose to walk before her rapidly fuck it. When the men wouldn't thrust into her mouth hard enough, she'd take care of the slack with several quick bucks of her head, eager to be manhandled and ravaged by the supply of men before her. Though her makeup ran and a mess of spit covered her cheeks, her smile was wide and completely mad with desire. She was the first to taste cum, at least that evening. One of the men fucking her mouth with all of his fury finally made a grunting noise so loud that Rei could hear it over the steady rolling of the subway car. Why is the car moving if it's just a fuck train? Can't they just pull into the station, just stop it there? Or, like, in a tunnel or something?
I don't know.
I don't know. And she watched in utter shock as Ami sucked him down. She had half expected the man to pull out at the last minute and squirt his seed all over Ami's beautiful and delicate features.
Squirt his seed. That's so gross.
Squirt is a gross word, I guess.
Yeah.
Seed is kind of meh, too. But instead, he simply forced the girl's nose into his lap, creaming inside of her mouth at point-blank range. Though she coughed and gagged and sputtered in a sloppy mess, by the time he pulled his length out, she was greedily swallowing and already looking for a new prick to replace it. This is what her friends were doing? Ray almost couldn't believe it, and she wondered briefly if the Dark Kingdom really was behind it. She sensed that none of their evil, even with her powers stretching out as far as they could, and, moreover, none of her friends looked to be held by any compulsion other than their own desires. Desires that, if Ray was being completely honest, ebbed at her own body as well.
Oh my God.
She was hurt that her friends had left her out of the party, but they had been right to do so. She would have tried to ruin it before even giving it a chance. She would have told them what they were doing was crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah, it is. Like, you're right.
Unsafe sex.
Yes,
At least use condoms. If you're going to be fucking a bunch of strange men in a subway car, condoms are your friend. Diseases.
Yeah,
Pregnancy.
For real.
Although they're just giving blowjobs at the moment, so I don't know.
Hopefully no cream pie.
Well, it's the tags.
I don't... Whatever.
Remember?
I don't know.
The kneeling teenage fuck sluts for a group of middle-aged married men? The Ray that lived before that moment never would have condoned it. But as she remained creeping there against the door, watching her friends as they received a second, third, and fourth load as prizes for their service, her indignation faded quickly away. In its place grew something altogether new, something that made Ray blush from embarrassment, but burned hot enough within her for Sailor Mars to finally open the door. Jealousy. When the rear subway door opened up, everyone in the middle car suddenly turned, looking back to see who had interrupted their fun. Nearly 24 men were there in various states of undress, each of them studying the stunning new teenage girl that appeared before them. They weren't sure of her intentions just yet, but from her sexy little outfit with heels and a short skirt, they were certainly hoping that she was looking to join. It was the Sailor Scouts, each of them marked with cum and spit in varying degrees of severity, that stared at their friend at the end of the subway car with the most hesitation. The entire car was silent for a moment, save for the steady noise of it rolling against the subway rails. Neither side knew just what to say, and though the men being held in the hands of the Sailor Scouts remained nice and hard, they ached to feel their mouths again just as much as the Scouts craved to taste them. It was a relief when Ray finally spoke, every person within the subway car giving a smile and a sigh as they realized where the evening was headed. Can I... I should have just switched these voices, because the other one's the nerd, I guess.
It's fine.
Ray stammered for a moment, the words almost catching in her throat. I mean, with the way I'm reading this, it's kind of nice. I suppose someone's listening, and then we speak.
Yeah, and then we speak, and they're like,
then we speak.
Honey.
Almost catching in her throat. She had been the responsible one for so long, always serious, always focused, and so often refusing herself the sort of fun the others enjoyed. She had a hard time relaxing, and sometimes a hard time smiling. The Shinto priestess, the Sailor Scout, the mother hen of her friends. None of those things were what she wanted to be in that moment. Can I join? She wanted to be a throat-fucked teenage slut, just like all of her friends. I hope they can't hear me through the ceiling.
Oh my god, this
honestly.
is so ridiculous.
I hope they're asleep or something.
Okay. Ray was... I'm gonna go, because
we're gonna do line break, pretending.
We're pretending it's a line break. Ray was brought into the group with the welcomed arms of her friends, drugged down to her knees, and offered her very first taste of cock. It was the thick length of a man sharply dressed from the waist up and naked from the waist down, eagerly feeding his tip into the warm, wet mouth of the raven-haired Sailor Mars.
At least they didn't say moist.
A groan echoed from his throat as he first felt his tip resting against her tongue, and with a slow push of his hips, he continued to feed it to her, allowing her the briefest of chances to get used to it. She'd have a lot more cock shoved down her mouth before that Thursday night was over. So there was plenty of practice yet to come. As Ray let her eyes close,
He's judging my adorable cat.
Jake is literally judging us.
He's sleeping. He's going to sleep.
As Ray let her eyes close as she savored the taste against her mouth, she could feel her friends bumping against her as they all went back to work. From the feeling of Sailor Jupiter's boot-clad foot across one of her own calves, to the gentle bumping of Sailor Mercury's elbows against her waist. They were packed tightly together so they could all savor the experience as a team, and Ray had to admit she felt closer to the other scouts than she ever had before. Ray simply continued to suck on her very first cock, her hands moving to hold around the shaft as she handled him in long and savory strokes. When her eyes opened, she was constantly assaulted lewdly by what she saw, whether it was the predatory gaze of 24 men or the sight of her best friends getting fucked deep and hard in their pretty little mouths.
Oh my.
She was still a bit overwhelmed by it all, and so Sailor Mars mostly kept her eyes closed and her mouth wrapped tight around the first sweet length, savoring the taste, and trembling at the lewd shame that rolled through her. She was wet underneath her uniform, wickedly so, though she feared that if she dropped a hand to fondle herself, she might truly spin off into madness. The man resting against Ray's tongue wasn't able to last for long, as no man could when presented with the warm and inviting mouth of Sailor Mars. Her pretty pale features and her raven hair were too much to endure for long, and when the older man within her mouth started to echo his deep and hungry grunt, Mars could only prepare herself for what was to come. That's a pun. It's a play on words. This is like poetry. Even in her naivety, I don't know why I couldn't say that word. I almost said in her nativity.
Naive.
Even in her naivety, she knew that the rush of white would soon be upon her, and though she desperately wanted to taste his cream, to swallow it down like a greedy slut, the fear of choking on it overtook her as he finally started to throb. As a result, the very first taste of his cream was pressed to the front of her lips, and when his meaty flesh flopped out past her mouth, it squirted across Sailor...
That's not a sexy line.
Sailor Mars's beautiful pale features crossing her face in several thick, wide streams. This is poetry. Yeah. This is beautiful.
It's a lot better written than the Tamarini mating season one. So it's a lot later too, I think, though.
It's just so funny to me.
This one's a lot more recent than that last one.
She made money to do this too, because it's a Patreon thing.
True.
Some of it marked her cheeks, crossing just over one of her eyes and splashing against the tiara of Sailor Mars. Another lodged deep in her dark locks of hair, a sticky white mess that would rest there for some time. Even more of it shot with such ferocity that it bypassed over Sailor Mars completely, careening over the beautiful girl's head and landing behind her across Sailor Jupiter's boot, looped over her calf. With her first cock sucked to completion, Ray gave a shivering smile and looked up at the...
completion. I feel like it's another thing that was...
That's a weird terminology.
I feel like we read that somewhere.
We have, and looked up at the older man that was in the process of pulling himself back. She felt good, more aroused than she had ever been, wet and excited in unimaginable ways, and moreover, that close to her friends.
Oh, I feel so close to you.
Through all their battles and all their heroism at each other's sides, it was with a sting to her knees and the thick smell of wet, lewd sex that brought them all closer together as a family. The responsible Ray had never felt quite so accepted by the group as when one of Sailor Venus's hands went into her dark locks and she helped to push Ray's head down on the next cock, ready to spread her lips.
I feel so close to you because you're forcing my head back.
Here we go. It's time. Giggling as she helped her friend to throat it. There seemed to be no end to them. Ray didn't even get to wipe the cum off her tiara before she was throating another thick length. Your cat is like... He's like, what did I get myself into?
He looks very judgmental all the time, so it's not really...
I love him. I'm so glad you could join us, Ray! Venus beamed, her bright and beautiful features marked by a spot of creamy white cum clinging to her cheeks. This is like poetry. Mm-hmm. I could write a dissertation on this for English.
Oh my, I don't know if you'd want to.
She even leaned in and pressed a kiss to Sailor Mars's cheek, leaving a wet mark there to linger on the other woman's flesh.
The flesh.
Thanks for giving it a chance! Ray was left with her cheeks burning and her mouth still spread around that thick cock resting against her tongue, half afraid that if she pulled it out now, even to smile to Venus, that it might look like she was resisting the madness that had overtaken them. Instead, she simply nodded to Venus, the motion making that length bob up and down right along with her lips perched so tightly against the shaft. Of all the girls, only Usagi had neglected to give Ray the warm welcome that the others offered. Not that Ray could entirely blame her. She had always been particularly hard on Sailor Moon for her childishness and her irresponsibility, always riding her to be a more mature and adult young woman. Now here she was, finally throwing herself into just the sort of thing she'd been sworn against under other circumstances. She was a hypocrite with burning cheeks and the taste of cock resting against her tongue, and the Shinto priestess fully expected that Sailor Moon was rather upset at her. She was wrong, and the way in which she discovered it came to the girls' great delight.
Want me to take over?
Yes, we're going to let you take over for a bit.
As the men offered their cum to the Sailor Scouts, so readily servicing them, Mars watched as Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter all enjoyed loads across their face. Ami readily swallowed it like a starving bitch, while Jupiter was content to have it on her face. And Venus...
I'm sorry, that was just really unexpected.
Yeah. And Venus had openly invited the three men she was working on to plaster it within the long, beautiful blonde strands of her hair.
Ooh, it's like conditioner.
Right now, with this lighting, my hair looks really dark compared to my skin.
But your skin looks really pale.
Yeah, I know. While they were all showered with cum in their own preferred fashion, Usagi was focusing on a particularly thick cock, one larger than the others Ray had seen thus far, and so wide that it was spreading Usagi's already big mouth to the very limits. The man fucking her mouth didn't seem to be a professional like the others. He had a working-class build and a domestic shirt, and his hair was a bit more unkempt than the others. With his hands holding tight to Usagi's pigtails, he thrust his hips hard and fast in rapid succession, and when his moment finally came, Ray simply watched in stunned silence as Sailor Moon collected his load. The blonde hero accepted it fully in her mouth, her eyes opening wide from the sudden rush of cream. She struggled to collect it, and as she looked up at his features with her mouth drawn tight around his cock, her eyes starting to water from the strain of it all, she wanted to cough, to gag, to pull his member from her mouth and release all of that white cream. But she was strong. She was Sailor Moon, protector of the innocent, enemy of the Dark Kingdom, teenage cocksucker.
I feel like that's her Tinder profile.
Probably.
Oh my god.
When he finally pulled out of her mouth, Usagi didn't immediately swallow, and instead turned her attention squarely upon Sailor Mars. She finally, at long last, greeted her friend by moving a hand out, roughly taking a fistful of long, silky black hair and yanking her close at hand. There,
oh god,
I'm sitting strangely.
Without
right invitation or hesitation, Usagi pressed her lips against Ray's and gave her a rich, cum-filled kiss.
Snowballing.
Ray was left trembling in her elegant skirt and uniform, her entire body shivering as she felt cum fill her mouth and swirl about her tongue. As Usagi shared the load she'd worked so hard to earn, she kept one hand tight in Ray's hair, while the other lowered, moving boldly down to Ray's mound, where it lay hidden underneath her uniform. Ray, without any presence of mind but to do everything her passions told her, obediently lifted her skirt to allow the leader of her team any access she so desired. While their tongues still danced in a cum-filled mess, Usagi simply tugged Ray's uniform aside, far enough to expose her slit and the tiny mark of black fur that was neatly trimmed and sitting squarely atop it. Fur. Hair. Once Ray's pussy was exposed, Sailor Moon finally broke the kiss, and with ribbons of cum connecting her mouth to Sailor Mars's, spoke with a happy, yet mildly dominant tone.
I'm sorry, I need to tag back to pussy. That feels so out of...
But this line.
Pussy!
This line.
Okay, here we go. In the name of the moon, your mouth's getting punished tonight, she whispered, erupting into a wicked little giggle. That much was clearly Usagi's playful side slipping through her stern facade as Sailor Moon. Though Ray wasn't able to giggle about it much, her voice was stolen just a moment afterwards by a rush of warmth against her flesh, and she looked down to realize the proper greeting that Sailor Moon had prepared for her. 2 of the men crouched near Ray, jerking their cocks to completion squarely over her slit.
Unsafe.
You're gonna get pregnant. Cum was raining down against Sailor Mars's most sensitive entrance, hot streaks of warm white delight peppering against her folds and slithering down her entrance. Ray gasped and clung to Sailor Moon as arousal ached through her at the crude display, but Usagi was clearly not there for the other woman's comfort. She only indulged the men further by slipping her hand forward, her gloved fingers working against Ray's folds, spreading her pussy out, allowing her cum to strike to strike her deeper, sweeter, and far more intimately. "Over here, everyone!" Usagi called out, giggling as she licked a bit of the excess cum from Ray's lips. "Let's give Sailor Mars a nice warm welcome!"
Sailor Moon, Ray's hand was swimming as another man drew forward, launching a wet, warm load squarely against her pussy. Pussy. That word just doesn't seem to match.
No, it doesn't jive with this. It's like it's in verse, and then that's like suddenly hard prose.
Yeah.
That's a Shakespeare thing. You're welcome.
Yeah. This time, Usagi pulled Ray's uniform back into place just long enough to smear that cum around within it, pressing her palm flat to the girl's covered slit and wiggling that white fabric rapidly back and forth. Sailor Mars wailed in delight as she felt it, and when Usagi's hand pulled back, her folds were covered in a white glaze from the cream rubbed in against her. 2 more men were quick to line up and bathe Sailor Mars's pussy in cum. But when they finished, came the most intimate treatment of all. 3 smiling Sailor Scouts, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, all with wicked glints in their eyes, and all with cheeks puffed out and lips pressed shut tight together. One by one, the 3 girls lowered themselves, and each time they brought their mouth just inches before Ray's pussy to offer a treat they had been holding. Ami went first,
not safe.
her blue mop of short hair dangling before Ray's slit, and she parted her lips wide as she allowed a small wave of white cream to ooze from her mouth. There's noises on the ceiling. The cum she had collected from 3 different men seeped in against Ray's patch of black hair, and when Ami leaned back up, she gave Ray a bright smile, her makeup still smeared, and her face a sloppy, spit-covered mess, but far happier than Ray had ever seen her. "You're up next, Sailor Jupiter," I forget. She called before the tomboy of the group moved up with a grin. Sailor Jupiter was strong and bold, and Ray was left gasping as the powerful woman reached down, grabbing her ankles and clutching them tight in gloves that were wet from spit. She pulled Ray's legs up into the air and spread them out before lowering herself to her knees, her mouth dropping so she too could give her gift to Sailor Mars. The dialogue is always so innocent, except for this line that's way over here.
Oh my god!
But then all the narration is just so dirty.
It's like poetic, and then weirdly it like breaks poetry, and then it becomes poetic.
Kind of
it's like
neat.
Weird. Oh boy,
where was I? Gift. Another parting of her lips brought another warm wash of cum across Ray's virginal slit, this time squarely across her folds. Usagi used her fingers to hold Ray's pussy spread for the bath, and when it was finished, Sailor Jupiter's head darted forward. She pursed her lips around the patch of Ray's hair and sucked quickly the cream that Ami had left to collect there, only to let her gaze linger hard on Sailor Mars's eyes. She made sure she had her friend's gaze, and then, with a wicked smirk and a mouthful of swapped and stolen cum, finally swallowed. Slow, meaningful, and erotic. She licked her lips before offering Ray's already tender pussy a quick and soft slap, and fell back into line only to make way for Sailor Venus. The beautiful blonde Sailor V had the biggest mouthful of all, and indeed had been collecting cum in her mouth for that very event. It had been difficult to resist swallowing it all down, but all of that waiting was worth it, as Sailor Moon gave a wild giggle, moving both of her hands out to press against Ray's folds. Ray was left helpless now, her pussy spread wide by Usagi's gloved fingers as Sailor Venus dropped in between her thighs. She didn't spit the cum like Sailors Mercury and Jupiter, so much as usher it forward on her tongue, slurping it up with her nose nestled against Ray's folds and her mouth pressed squarely against her slit.
I'm sorry, I know those are gross noises, but that's so disgusting.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Slurping? No.
Slurping, yeah. I mean...
God, that's some good semen.
She shoveled the first tongue load of cum squarely inside of Ray, and the girls all thrilled at the sound of their friend's cry. Ami giving a wicked giggle, and Jupiter openly applauding as she heard it. Even Sailor Moon, leader of the Scouts, gave a laugh as she continued to hold Ray's pussy nice and spread for the treatment.
Sounds like she's going to end up as the biggest slut of all! Usagi beamed and gazed down at Ray with a devious grin. As Sailor Venus shoveled another tongue load of cum into Mars's entrance, she gave another cry once more, and despite everything she thought she knew about herself, finally felt the rush of an orgasm overtake her body. It was all too overwhelming, all too much for the beautiful Ray to bear. The warm cum that was being ushered into her pussy by one of her best friend's tongues, the feel of Usagi's fingers against her slit, the scent of sex and the chill of the moving subway car underneath her. As she felt that heat rise up within her, she looked desperately from side to side, seeing that Jupiter and Mercury had already returned to the still present army of cocks. Before them, sucking and slurping and greedily claiming as many as they could. Mercury was pumping 2 with her fists while sucking down a third, and the dominant and tomboyish Jupiter had perched herself behind her friend with one hand lifting Mercury's pretty blue skirt, while the other had snuck a hand under her uniform, fingering her boldly in a fashion that suggested that it was an odd, old practice style. Underneath all that attention and surrounded by so much lust, the Shinto priestess couldn't help but scream as she climaxed.
Not screaming.
Her pussy...
It's like 1 in the morning.
Her pussy...
2
it's 2 in the morning. Tensed, and her thighs tightened as she shuddered in her spot, prone on the subway car's floor. Her red heels dangling off her feet as her toes curled within them. She could hear Sailor Moon cheering for her as her head began to swim, but ultimately she could do little more than close her eyes and let her body hit its wonderful, thrilling peak. She had played with herself in the past, but never had enjoyed something so deep, throbbing, or fulfilling. And by the time Ray's eyes opened, with a glazed expression resting upon them, she fully knew that she was addicted. Not even once, kids. Not even once. She trembled in place, still held tight by Sailor Moon, and still with Sailor Venus giving her sweet, fond licks, marked with the rich cream of several older men. As her vision focused once more, she could see Usagi fondly sucking a new cock that had been dropped against her shoulder, and even further still she could see someone crouching behind Sailor Venus, moving a hand forward to slowly peel away the back of her uniform. Things were about to get even more intense that Thursday night. Ray knew as much, surrounded by her closest friends, each of them enjoying the taste of cock and the warm rush of cum within their mouths. Sailor Mars was fully included in the fun.
Finally.
Her smile, marked with a little bit of cream from Sailor Moon's lewd kiss,
Still?
Parted as the young woman finally started to speak.
Her voice was soft, yet enough to draw the attention of her friends. Sailor Moon plucked her lips from the length, parting them while Jupiter and Mercury each glanced back, their mouths connected with a thread of spit that also anchored them to 2 large lengths. By the time Venus looked up, webbed to Mars's pussy with lines of cream, Ray finally found the voice to finish her thought. To get fucked first. The other Sailor Scouts gave an enormous smile, exchanging glances as they beamed at their responsible friend. If Ray thought she was mature before that Thursday, she'd be a whole new level of maturity by the time morning came. Sailor Mars, like the rest of the friends, had finally become a full-fledged slut of the Sailor Scout subway. Title drop. The end.
Notes. Thanks for reading. This messy little story is the winner of my January Patreon. Oh, whatever. Never mind. It's just them talking about stuff. So that's the fic. As represented by The And.
The End.
You know what? I think this fits as our 50th episode special. Because, hey, guys, guess what? This is the 50th episode, if you didn't notice. Because this is really what fanfiction is all about.
This encompasses our entire Fanfiction Friday experience. Reading at 2 in the morning in the downstairs of my parents' house while they're trying to sleep upstairs.
With a cat rolling around on the floor, with poor lighting, and with lots and lots of sex.
And the shame.
And this must be what kids feel like when they fuck, when their parents are home. and like we're just doing it through messy fan fiction.
Oh god.
So this fic was actually...
Yeah, like every time there's like noise, it's like, wait, stop.
Stop. Hold on, they can hear us.
Hold on a second.
This fic was actually very poetic, I found.
It was neat.
And then pussy happened, so that's a thing. Yeah. But, and when the dialogue was a little weird, but we also gave it weird voices, so that's a thing. I don't know.
You know, if we tried, we could probably be really good at doing like...
Oh, absolutely, but... Part of the show about this...
I've never actually listened to one, but...
Part of the thing about this show, for me, is that it's still a comedy.
It's silly.
It's like, the fan fiction is there, but I really want the focus to be more so like us performing the fan fiction in a silly comedic way.
I guess.
That's what my focus is whenever I do it.
The dialogue.
As I take the dialogue and I'm like...
There was a lot less commentary on this fic than what we usually do.
It's also 2 a.m, and this fic sort of like... I don't know, I just felt very content with this, because I was like, this is fan fiction. Yeah. This is what you expect when you read fan fiction. That's what I expect when I read fan fiction, so...
And this is the same author as Tamaraini Meeting Season, and if they ever find this, God forbid, please never find this.
Let us know what you thought about our rendition. Yeah, this was a really good fic, actually. And like I said, it encompassed Fanfiction Friday.
It's so unsafe. Never actually do this in real life. Ever.
If I had to give this fic a rating out of 5 Sailor Scout Subway sluts, this fic would get like 4 Sailor Scout Subway sluts out of 5. What do you say?
Sure.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to our 50th episode. Be sure to give the video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we have awesome new content coming out every week. And join us next week when we get back to clockwork and we start punching away at more of that fic, because God knows we still have over 30 chapters left, and we will finish it. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, stay awesome, read more smut. Bye.
Bye.